Masechet Yoma Daf Chaf. We begin with the Mishnah. We're going in chronological order, so we talked about the 7 days already, and then the day before, and now we're talking about that night, the night of Leil Yom Kippur. He has to stay up all night, and then when it gets closer to the morning, he has to begin his first activity, which is going to be removing the ashes from the Mizbeach. Things are burnt there all night, and some of the ashes have to be taken off and put in a pile next to the Mizbeach. So this is done every day. In fact, Bechol Yom Tormin et HaMizbeach B'Kriyat HaGeved or Samuch Lo. On a regular day, this avodah was done around the time that the rooster crows, a little before, a little after, around dawn. Ben lefanav ben la'acharav. Yom Kippurim mechasot. Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol removes the ashes at midnight. We'll see why. Bargalim mashmura harishona. During holidays, when there's a lot of activity happening, he has to do it even earlier. Whoever the Kohen has to do it after the first third of the night, which would be like on an average day about 10 p.m. ולא הייתה קריאת הגבר מגעת עד שהייתה עזרה מלאה מישראל. And this announcement would, on the holiday, would be, by the time it was made, already the entire Azara, the whole courtyard was filled with people that were coming to celebrate each of the holidays, bringing their korbanot to be sacrificed. So you see, at the holidays, things were even busier. That's why they had to get a really early start. So that's the Mishnah giving us 3 times. We're going to first find a source for this. Tenan hatam barim shepaka'u me'al gabei hamizbeach kodem chasot yachzir u'mo'alin bahem. Lachar chasot lo yachzir ve'en mo'alin bahem. So as bones of the animal are burning all night, sometimes because of the heat, it might explode and a piece of the bone might fly off the Mizbeach. And the question is, what do you do with it? Do you put it back on or can you leave it off? Well, it depends what time. If it flew off before Chatzot, so then we assume that before midnight, it didn't cook sufficiently. All right, it has to turn into, when you put it on, it's fresh meat, has to turn into ashes. So if it's before midnight, that means it needs to be burnt some more. So you got to put it back on. If you don't, if someone takes it and uses it, they would commit me'ilah because it's you still have to do avodah with it. There is some substance of meat on it. So you got to do it again. However, after Chatzot, in other words, once midnight comes, we assume it was sufficiently burnt. It's just ashes. So therefore, if it flies off, you don't have to put it back on. And if someone would use it for personal use, they would not commit me'ilah. So that's the Mishnah in Zevachim. And we ask, what's the source for this? How do you know what time is the proper time to clean off the ashes? Amarav, katuv echad omer kol halayla v'iktir. V'chatuv echad omer kol halayla v'herim. HaKesad. So we have 2 pisukim that contradict each other. Now these are not actual pisukim. There is no pasuk that says kol halayla v'iktir. Rather, it's talking about these 2 pisukim, which are back to back in Vayikra chapter 6. It says, Torat ha'olah. When you prepare an olah, this is how you could do it. It's going to be al mokedal mizbeach. It's going to be on the fire that's on the mizbeach. Kol halayla ad haboker. So first of all, we have a double language that's going to come up in a minute. So it's burnt all night until the morning, and the fire must be kept going on the mizbeach. So that's the pasuk that is about burning it. So that's what, when it quotes here, Kol halayla v'iktir, is saying it has to burn all night. The next pasuk 3 says, so the Kohen is going to wear his clothing, and he has to clean off the ashes that are on the mizbeach. So the second pasuk actually does not say any time period. So we don't really know when it is. I guess we're assuming that we're continuing the time period from the second pasuk. So that's also kol halayla ad haboker. And therefore we have a contradiction. Well, which is it? Kol halayla ad haboker, is that for the burning or is that for the cleaning off? So how can we resolve this? So we'll split the difference and we'll say the burning has to be for half the night, and the cleaning can be anytime after midnight. Or at midnight, really at midnight, that's when it should be. So that's how we derive this law, because this Mishnah above said exactly at midnight. That's the cutoff point when you know something is sufficiently burnt, and then that's it. Then you don't have to put it back on. So midnight is the midway point to resolve these two Pesukim. The problem, that's okay for that Mishnah, but it does not help us in our Mishnah. And that's going to be the question at Rav Kahana, because our Mishnah is 3 different times depending on the day. So, Me'ativ Rav Kahana, Bechol Yom Tormin et HaMizbeach, B'kriyat HaGever, O Samuch Lo, Ben Melefana, Ben Me'acharav. On a regular day, we do it at dawn when the rooster crows. Yom Kippurim Hasot. Yom Kippur, it's midnight, and other holidays, it's at 10 p.m. So look, there's all different times. If you think that we learn from the Torah has to be exactly midnight, well, how could you ever do it at 10 p.m.? That would be impossible. It still has to continue burning. And how could you do it at dawn, right? It says at midnight. That's when you have to do it. So that derivation does not help us. Ella Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan tries a different derivation from the same pasuk. Mimashma shenemar kol halayla ani yodea shehu ad haboker umatamud ad haboker. So Rabbi Yochanan is deriving it from the double language. It has to burn all night until the morning. You don't need if you say all night. I know it's till the morning. So what do these extra words come to tell me? Ten boker lebokro shel laila. Some comes to say add another morning period to the morning of the night. Meaning, don't wait until the morning. Ada boker is coming to add more time to the morning. The morning, don't start the morning at sunrise or at dawn. Add more time, and so therefore it's adjustable. So at some point during the night, you can already say, okay, we are anticipating the morning, and so depending on what's going on and how long you need, you can do it at different times in the night. All right, I mean, this is not the Peshat. The Peshat sounds like it really has to burn all night until the morning, and then the next Pasuk says, and then in the morning, that'll be the first thing you do, which is what we do most days. But it's for practical reasons, there are times when we need to make it earlier, so the rabbis find a source for that. So Hilkach bechol yom tomit hamizbeach b'kriyat hagever o samuch lo ben milfana ben acharav. Sagya. On a regular day, we're now going to explain the reason. It's sufficient, right? There's not so much to do, so they can do the first avodah of the Terumat Hadeshen around a little before, a little after. It doesn't have to be an exact time. However, Yom Kippurim dika cholsha dechon gadol abdinan mechasot. On Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is going to have to do a lot of things. He's going to be very busy all day, and he's staying up all night, so he needs to rest between things. So that's why he wants to get a head start. Also, he's up all night anyway. What's he doing? So she does it at midnight, and that way he can go and change and rest and be ready for the next item. B'regalim de nefish Yisrael nefishi korbanot abedinan me'ashmoret harishona kedekatane ta'ama. On the holidays, huge crowds come, and they all bring their korbanot, and so we need to really get a head start. So we do the first thing at 10 p.m. and that way we can prepare, bring the wood that we're going to burn, organize the people. As the Mishnah continues and says, right, by time it was dawn, the whole courtyard was full, and so then it would be difficult for the Kohanim to move around and be able to prepare their service. So that's why they had to start so early. Question?
Yeah, I mean, this understanding that adding another boker, right, that it's flexible, I get it, that would explain the chatzot, but to go all the way till 10 p.m., that's really stretching it, no?
Yeah, that's stretching it, and it does seem to contradict the other Mishnah that said that it has to burn until midnight, right? And if it doesn't, you have to put it back on. So now you're cleaning it off, even though it didn't quite finish burning yet. Okay, it doesn't mean they put out the fire though. There's things can still burn on there. When they say clean off the ashes, you don't have to clean them off totally. You have to just take some ashes. It's like a ceremonial thing. Take a scoopful of ashes and put them down on the floor next to the mizbeach. But actually, there was a custom that they would leave a lot of ashes there over the holiday and let it build up so that the people could be impressed. Look how many korbanot we brought. So, I don't think this would preclude the fact that the burning continues. The fire is there anyway. It has to be kept there all night. But they do want to. This has to be the first thing that they do. They can't get going with the next items until this first thing is done. So they need all that time. Okay, my Kiryat HaGeber. What does this mean? The Mishnah mentioned Kiryat HaGeber. What does this word Geber mean? Rav Amar Kira Gavra, Rav Shela Amar Kira Tarnegola. So Rav says it's talking about a person. There's a person, that's his job. He's the temple crier. He had a loud voice and he would announce, right? Okay, it's time for everybody to get going. That's Rav, the first generation Amora who founded the Yeshiva in Sura. Rabbi Shela, however, says no, it's talking about a rooster. Rabbi Shela was a little bit senior than Rav, and he's the founder of the yeshiva in Nehar De'ah. This is, we say in the morning, Noten Sechvi Bina, and Sechvi also, what does that word Sechvi mean? Some say it means like a mind, that we have a mind that we can distinguish between day and night. Others say it's talking about a rooster, although it's not the usual word for rooster. I know one time an American went to a restaurant in Israel and said, Ani roseh Sechvi. And the guy says, Ma sechvi, right? They say off. Okay, so anyway, this word gavra, it seems to mean a person, right? But that's the machloket between them. So now we have a quite interesting story. Rav ikela le'atreh de Rabbi Shela. So one time Rav went from Surah to Nehar De'ah, right? Remember Nehar De'ah? That was the place we saw yesterday where the boys and girls were fooling around. Okay. But that must be later. Hopefully not under Rabbi Shela's watch. Okay, so Rav went to Rabbi Shela's city one time. Lahava amora lemakam aleh de Rabbi Shela. Rabbi Shela is there giving the lecture. Now, the way that when someone gave a public official lecture, it was appropriate for the rabbi to be sitting down and speak in a moderate tone, a moderate voice, not to stand up and scream. It's not respectful for the sage to have to do that. And so they would have an amora, which literally means a translator. Not necessarily that they might be translating from, let's say, Hebrew to Aramaic, but really more as an announcer, to be a loud voice. And also, sometimes this announcer would add in his own interpretation, explanation to the things. Last week we had a speaker in the synagogue who only spoke in Hebrew, and one of the congregants was translating, but he didn't translate all the parts. He only translated the parts he liked. So I don't know if that's good or bad. So anyway, there was no Amorah there for Rabbi Shela. His usual person wasn't around. So Kam Rav Alev, Kam Mefaresh. So Rav was there. So he got up, and Rav was going to be the announcer for Rabbi Shela, even though Rav was, Rosh Yeshiva. So really, he was overqualified for this. And he was explaining, "My Kiryat HaGeber, Kera Gabra." And so Rabbi Shela explained his own opinion that it's talking about a rooster. But when Rav announced it, he said, "Oh, the rabbi just said that the word Gavra means a person, the temple crier." Says, don't say that, right? That's not what I said. That's not I don't agree with your explanation, right? Say it's a rooster. Go tell them that, right? Correct yourself. And so Rav answers back with an amazing statement. Amar le abub le hare zemed. A flute player for chorim, bnei chorim, for noblemen, they appreciate good music. And for them, it is fine music. But for a weaver was the lowest class, very poor, uneducated people. They don't like the music. This is fine chamber music. Sophisticated people, educated, they like it. But common people, they say, oh, we don't like that music. So he's comparing the Bishela to a low-grade weaver. He says, you don't appreciate the Torah that I am saying. Who does? Ki hava kaemna ale de Rabbi Chiya umefarishna mai kiryat hageber kera gavra velo amar li vela midi vat amat li ema kera tanegola. Says when I was an Amora in front of Rabbi Chiya, and I explained when he was speaking, I explained that Kiryat HaGever means a person, and he didn't correct me, right? He was totally okay with that. And Rabbi Chiya is an even greater sage. So you see, he appreciates good flute playing. He appreciates true Torah. And you tell me, no, correct it, right? So you are like the weaver. You're not worthy of appreciating my good explanation. Okay, really a sharp statement there. But Rabbi Shela has a sharp comeback. Amar le morni hurav. Nenachmor says, "Oh, who is this? Who are you, Rav? Oh, you're the great master. You're overqualified for this job. You should take a rest." Right? Basically, he's firing him, but in a nice way, saying, you're too great for your job. You rest and sit down. I don't want you to be my Amora anymore. Rav said, but Rav will not give up. Amar le amar amri inashe I tagart le pus amre. Basically saying, I forego my honor. If you hire yourself out to someone, then you should even do the comb his wool. In other words, if you're hired for a day, whatever it is, one of the low job is to brush the wool from the lamb. And so that's a very annoying job. But if you're hired for the day, right, you do what you got to do. You're hired in an office and they tell you to sweep the floor. You sweep the floor, then you got to do your job. So he says, I'm okay, even though I know, Rav, I'm a honored Rosh Hashiva, but I agreed to the job, so I'll do it. I'll humble myself. Basically, he's not leaving. Or another version of the answer, Velo moridin says, no, I have to go up and not lower. And so therefore you can't fire me, right? Even though I have this job, I can only get a better job. You can't fire me and go down to nothing. Or maybe alternatively, who else are you going to get? The next person is going to be a lower person. So I can't let you do that. No, I insist I'm going to be there. So Rav insists on being his Amora, but he also insists on explaining things his own way, not the way to be Shelah, who is actual local sage, wanted him to explain it. Okay, fantastic story. Now, Tanya kevated Rav, Tanya kevated Rabbi Shela. Right, although these are two Amoraim, the Rabbi Shela, the way is in the Dor HaMa'avar, the transitional generation between Tanaim and Amoraim. Their machloket is paralleled with two baraita, two Tanaitic sources, so they each have a good source. First, we'll quote the one in support of Rav that's talking about a person. Tanya kevated Rav. Givini karoz mahu omer. So it was a person, his name was Givini, and he was the temple announcer. So there you go. So it is in fact a person. And we know what would he say? How would he announce the beginning of the day? Amdu kohanim labodatchem, ulviim leduchenchem, Israel lema'amadchem, ve'ya kolo nishma b'shalosh parsaot. He would announce and tell the kohanim, come to your service, Leviim, go to your platform where they would perform music, and Israel for their watch, right? Israel, they would take turns and they would be there and they would participate and say prayers during the avodah. And he had such a loud voice, it could be heard for 3 parsangs, about 8 miles away, they could hear his voice. You could see that in our Musaf, right? We have we quote something like this, that the Kohanim should return. So this makes it into our own liturgy. Question?
It's actually interesting because actually among the Muslims, right, they have in the morning they have like the person who calls to prayer. So it's a similar idea.
Good, excellent, right? And this is so he's like the conductor, in the factory. Okay, everybody get started. We're starting the day. All right, Maaseh be'Agrippas hamelech shaya ba baderech. So one time, Agrippa, this is King Agrippa. He's Herod the Great's grandson, and he was the last ruler of Judea. He lived in the 40s. He was good friends with the emperor, with the Roman emperor's family. He actually was brought up by Tiberius, and was friends with Tiberius' son. He was friends with Caligula. That's how he, even though when he was in Rome, living in Rome, he went into debt, and he was like he wasn't very responsible with his finances. But because he was friendly with the emperor's family, they helped him out, and he was able to get this position. So anyway, King Agrippa, he was well respected by the Jews. They really liked him. He's mentioned in the Talmud, Josephus, Philo, for a lot of good things that he did. Okay, so one time he was on the way, walking on the way, and he heard this Gavini call out, "Hey, it's time! Everybody, it's time for the avodah." He was so impressed with this temple crier and how loud he was, he sent him gifts. Okay, so that's the kind of guy he was. I guess that's why he was popular. And even though this Gavini was so loud, nevertheless, the Kohen Gadol was even louder than him, the Kohen Gadol at this time. This Kohen Gadol, when he was saying the vidui on Yom Kippur, right? He says, Ana Hashem, Chatanu, right? Avinu. He would say it in a loud voice, and it could be heard all the way to Jericho. That's even farther than 3 mil. How far is that? So if the other one could do 8 miles, right? This one was that was 3 parsaot. This is 10 parsaot, right? So three more than 3 times farther than the other guy. And it's even more impressive because the temple crier, he does it any day of the week. He can take a drink before, right, and prepare. Whereas the Kohen Gadol, he's weak, he's fasting, he's up all night, and yet he can say such a loud voice. And also, here is during the day, the Kohen Gadol has to announce it during the day. That's when he's doing the avodah with the pod and sa'ir, and the temple announcer is doing it at night. And we know that a voice travels farther at night. Now that's what we're going to prove. Why does a voice travel farther at night? I mean, this is true. At night, when things are quiet, you can hear something from far away. During the day, there's just a lot of background noise. So, how come you can't hear people as well from far away during the day compared to the nighttime? Because the sun is sawing through the sky like a carpenter sawing through cedar. The idea is that the sun is not simply traveling through empty space, but is held in place in some kind of ether that is thick. And so therefore, for the sun to travel, it has to cut through all that thickness, and that makes a lot of noise, and that's why you can't hear so far during the day. And this sawdust that's around during the day, its name is La. I think what they're thinking of, when a ray of sunlight comes into your room and you can see dust particles and floating in the air. So maybe that's what they're thinking about, right? See, there's dust particles. Anyway, it's called La. And we see this in the pasuk in Daniel. He says, compared to God, all the inhabitants of the world literally means are like nothing to me, right? They're like they're insignificant. But now the Gemara is explaining it. La is that sawdust. So all the inhabitants of the earth are like sawdust. Okay, here it's spelled with an aleph. In our Tanakh, it's actually this word Kela is spelled with a he. So the Talmud cites it a bit differently, a slightly different spelling than we have. All right, Tenora Banan in Malek al Gal Haman Ishma. Since we're talking already about the sound of the sun, we continue. It says, if not for that sound, nishma kol hamona shel Romi. You would be able to hear the sound of the population of Rome. Rome was a huge city in ancient times, about 450,000 people. And anyone who went to Rome, most people, lived on a farm. They went to Rome and heard the noise of Rome. So they were really impressed by that. And so they assumed that Rome, anyone in the world could hear the sound of Rome, except that the sound of the sun is so loud that it drowns out the sound of the people in Rome. And if Rome didn't exist, then you would be able to hear the sound of the sun. But because we have both of these loud sounds, they mix together, and so they're not distinct. תנו רבנן 3 קולות הולכים מסוף העולם ועד סופו, ואלו הן כל גלגל חמה וכל המונה של רומי וכל נשמה בשעה שיוצאה מן הגוף. More about sounds. There are 3 sounds that can be heard from one end of the earth to the other. The first is the sound of the sun moving. The second is the population of Rome. And the third is the sound of a soul of a person when it leaves one's body. You can imagine someone screaming or some kind of noise when a person dies. Some say also a woman screaming in child labor. And so others add also Ridya. Ridya is an angel who's in charge of irrigating the earth. And if you think of when there's a big rainstorm, it's very loud, right? Rainstorm can be loud. So that's a sound that can be heard from one end of the earth to the other and attributed to this angel. And the rabbis once prayed that the sound that is made when someone dies, when the soul leaves, should be canceled, and it was in fact canceled. So that's why we don't hear that sound anymore. But once upon a time, this was a very scary sound that was very loud when someone dies. So that's that was just a tangent. But anyway, that was the proof for Rav that the temple announcer was a person, because we had a whole story about him. And since we were talking about how loud he is and how loud the Kohen Gadol is, so we talked about other things that are also loud. But now we come back to our subject. Here's a proof for Rabbi Shelah that it's a rooster. So someone who goes out and goes to travel before the rooster calls, or has this phrase, whatever that is, his blood is on his head, meaning don't travel at night. It's dangerous. And others say until the rooster crows twice, and others say 3 times. So obviously, it's talking about a rooster, not a Bet HaMikdash announcer, right? And most people they live wherever they live. They don't have a temple announcer in their backyard, right? But they have roosters, so that's how they know when you hear the roosters crow 3 times, then it's light enough that it's safe to travel. And we're not talking about some crazy rooster that crows in the middle of the night 3 times. We're talking about the average rooster that around dawn, they know that the light is coming, and so they crow. When they have 3 of them, then you know that that's true. So that's the deal with the roosters. Amazingly, they've done scientific studies on roosters, and they crow not based on the light. They actually they put them in rooms with artificial light, and the roosters somehow know with an internal circadian rhythm. They crow 2 hours before the expected light based on the past rhythms. So roosters are really good as wake-up clocks, and so that's what began the day. On most days, even though on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol began at midnight. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen v'amen.